All right. Welcome back to another episode of the Behind the Back podcast. We are your hosts. I am Marcos Conan Negron, and beside me here, as always, is Ben the Jet Retz. Ben, we're back. We lost. We're out. How you feeling?
I'm trying to find some hope. Obviously, there's hope to look forward to, right? But yeah, tough loss. It was going to be a tough matchup from the beginning. Um, yeah, a little defeated. I'll be honest.
For sure. Same. Obviously, it's tough when the season comes to an end, especially when, like you said, we were given hope with the Warriors game. I was just, I was pretty deflated. You could tell, like, they let go once they kind of got that deficit going into halftime or towards the end of the second quarter. It just kind of felt like it wasn't going to be their night. The Pelicans just did. By the way, Pelicans won 105-98. And the score doesn't actually signify how close the game really was. At the end of the day, it felt like it was almost a double-digit loss at that point. All the little things that we did so well in the Warriors game, we didn't do in this one. Like, it's and I don't even think it's a product of the Kings not being able to do it. I just think that the Warriors are such a different team than the Pelicans. I think the Pelicans just posed a completely different problem that the Kings have not been able to address this year, and that's the reason we've lost 6 straight against them.
Yeah, I mean, we talked about the physical mismatches that this Kings team faces when they play the Pelicans. That Pelicans team they're lengthy, man. Like 7 foot plus wingspans on a lot of these guys, if not almost all of them. Like it's tough. And even Jose Alvarado, who's the smallest guy out there, he's a dog. He's annoying, but he's a dog. And that's the kind of things you got to face, especially with, all these different variety of teams that you see in the NBA now. And this isn't an amazing team that we just lost to, but it's a team that was probably always going to have our number all year long, no matter what.
Yeah, I agree. It's weird. I think they're one of the few teams in the West, like I would put them and the Timberwolves in the same bracket, where they're like East Coast teams hiding in the West Coast in terms of how they're built.
Exactly.
And I think the NBA's, and then, like, with the way we saw Valanciunas, like, Domas had a good game today, but Jonas Valanciunas was equally as impressive. And it also, like, this year in particular, with the way the game is changing and the physicality of it, it's slowing down a bit. Teams are, if you have a good back to the basket big who can get you a bucket down low, like, that kind of trend is coming back now. And I thought that Brandon Ingram did a really good job. Kind of figured he was going to have a good bounce back game after the way he played in LA, which kind of sucks because, just like tonight was his night, things were going just like our night was against Golden State, and we just weren't making anything today. And on top of that, we turned the ball over too much. We couldn't capitalize on their turnovers. It was the little things. I want to ask you if you have a specific player or specific reason that you would give, like, this is probably the biggest reason why we lost this game, or you can give a couple, whatever you think, because obviously there's a lot to take away here.
Honestly, I mean, there's a lot to unbox. With this matchup, it's just so tough to really pinpoint one or two players or reasons why we lost. It ultimately just rebounds back to it's a mismatch for the Kings. It really is. The Kings, they don't show the physicality that the Pelicans brought in all 6 matchups this year. They don't have nearly the height that they do. Like, Valanciunas is an absolute beast. And I know that I actually think, is Sabonis taller? Like, there was a picture that popped up. I think Sabonis was a little bit taller than Valanciunas. I don't know if that was at the time. I don't know.
I think at the time Domas was taller, but I think Jonas is the bigger player now.
Yeah. So it was, there's so many mismatches from 1 through 5 looking at our bench. And then obviously, you know what, where I will put the fault are injuries, man. Like, not having Malik Monk out there to provide points and scoring off the bench and firepower and just a spark off the bench. Not having Kevin Huerter out there just to be one more guy that they need to close out a little tighter on than Keon Ellis. You know what I mean? Like, it's just there's there were factors, there were players missing in this game. It just wasn't going to be our night. That's what it boils down to.
Yeah, I feel the same way because I didn't think that there was anything outside of like, especially at the beginning of the game. We did such a good job matching the physicality, but then they provided even more of it and we couldn't respond. And we weren't moving the ball well because they were getting in the passing lanes. And if we had guys like Kevin in this game, he provides a little bit more length. He is a good deflection guy. Like Malik would have been a nice scoring punch off the bench when we struggled. Because that's the thing. Like another thing with this year is outside of the inconsistency with the free throws as we see here going 15 to 22, our offense just like stalled. Like in the fourth quarter, I think there was a point where they put it up on the broadcast. We shot 1 of 13 in the fourth quarter. So we got flustered and we couldn't get into a rhythm. And every time we responded, they had a response in return.
Yeah, it's definitely tough. I think we're going to get into this offseason, obviously, what we feel, you and I feel, is like maybe the potential best options for this team moving forward in terms of who do we re-sign, who we bring back, like who do we try and go get. But there are glaring pieces missing on this team. I think one for sure that you and I have talked about offline is just the presence of another just solo scorer, somebody who when we need a bucket, we've talked about it so many times, we need a bucket, we can't get one. This is the guy you can lean on. And obviously, like, Foxy is one of those guys, but this Kings team is super limited as to how many guys can actually go and get a bucket. And so it's a lot of teams see that coming. And so they can plan for that and they know how to shut that down. Like, you see Foxy getting hit with double teams a lot of the times, especially in the moments where another team's going on a run and they know that Foxy is going to try and take it into his own hands. And so they throw like a shaded double team at him. And the only option that Foxy sees at that time is like a step back three. And it's like, it's probably not the best option, but at the same time, is there really a better option with the guys that you have out there? And you look at the rest of the lineup and you're like, there's really not another bucket getter out there. And we really needed a bucket. So that's probably going to be one area like the Kings really need to focus this offseason, is just getting somebody who can take it into his own hands and maybe take a little bit of that stress off of Foxy in terms of getting a bucket.
Right. And like that's, I think when we go back to like a guy like Domas, that's where the criticism comes in, right? Like, is he really a true number two in terms of being able to create his own bucket? And without Malik, we lack that option. Keegan did a great job hitting from three against Golden State, but now in the nights like this, he goes cold. So it's like, what do you really do in that situation? So I agree that in the offseason, we need to add length. We need, whether it be big man size or we need wing size. So it's gonna be tough. Like, but there's ways to do it, and it'll be interesting to see, what the cost is to make that happen too. So
yeah.
So because we really want to get more into it, like postseason. It's tough now when things are raw and we don't really have too much to say. It sucks. Like you can take moral victories all you want, but at the same time, it's like this was supposed to be, an opportunity to take another step. But hey, I still think we took a step this year, beating Golden State, proving that we can eventually get over a mental hurdle like this. So I think maybe next year we come a little bit more prepared for New Orleans.
Yeah, agreed.
So Ben and I, in the spirit of the playoffs, even though we didn't want to do this, we are going to pick our bracket for the playoffs, and we're going to try the bracket challenge, and it becomes a lot less biased since the Kings aren't in it anymore. So
we had the Kings going and sweeping everybody in rounds 1, 2, and 3, like all the way, right? And winning the championship, sweeping Boston, not winning by more than like or less than 20. Like it was a clean sweep.
Yeah, exactly. We really had the homer attitude when making the bracket because you believe in your team. And obviously after the night we had a backup plan, but we didn't want to come up with anything until afterwards because we believe in our guys. So
Exactly.
So let's start. So how we did this, Ben and I, because this is a lot of series, and we didn't know how much time we were going to have tonight. So Ben and I, in advance, outside of the Thunder and who made it in the East, actually. I forgot. I didn't even check the game. It's the Heat. Okay, cool. So the Heat advanced. So, but we already kind of had an idea. So Ben and I had the Thunder going in 5 against the New Orleans Pelicans. Obviously, with Zion out, it's going to make things a little tougher for them. And at the same time, like, I don't know if I don't buy them beating the Thunder, even though the Thunder are the younger team.
Yeah, I don't know. The Thunder, they are the 1 seed for a reason in a stacked Western Conference, and
Yeah,
it's hard to overlook that kind of a thing, especially the sustainability that they had all season long. Like, I just don't see the Thunder losing this series at all, or even dropping that many games, if any.
yeah,
So
in this series for sure. And they're going to come in rested and ready to go, and they're a healthy team. So, all right. So we're going to move on to the Clippers against the Mavs here, and Ben went ahead and picked this one, correct? So let's get here. What did you have in this series, Ben?
I had the Mavs in 7. This was actually a really hard one, because it really boils down to, are the Clippers going to be healthy? Are they going to be sustainably healthy for the entire series? Like, even if they're completely healthy, I still see this series going 7 games. But I do have the Mavs going in 7. Just playoff Luka he's no joke. Like,
Yeah.
there's a reason he has that nickname, that there's he's known for being a different beast in the playoffs, and it's something that you just can't overlook.
Yeah. And I think with him it was like he had the best numbers since Michael Jordan in the playoffs. Like in terms of the
Yeah,
stats he's putting up, it's insane. Um and I also don't buy that the Clippers would stay healthy for a whole series either. I mean, Kawhi is coming into this series hurt, so that'll be interesting to see how that affects that game or that series.
yeah,
Oh,
it's and you get banged up the longer a series goes on. I mean, we saw it with the Warriors and the Kings last season. Like, the first round can be exhausting if it goes those 7 games, and especially with the firepower that these two teams can bring. Like, wouldn't be surprised if the Clippers get a little bit banged up, or even the Mavs get a little banged up, and that can definitely affect the series. So it's going to be something to watch for sure.
for sure. And another series where injuries will play a factor is the Timberwolves versus the Suns for the 3 and 6 seed. So I took this one, and I had the Suns beating the Wolves in 6. Now, the Wolves had looked awesome this year. I buy Anthony Edwards, ascent into superstardom at this point, and I like the look of that team. But the Suns have owned they're 3-0 against this team in the season series, and I buy that Kevin Durant this is one of the few teams that he can play as the 5 and actually give them trouble, because if you're going to go big against this Timberwolves team, and I've said this many times before, and this happened in his time in Utah, Rudy Gobert could be played out of series. So having Durant and you're putting Gobert up there, it's a mismatch nightmare. I think that over the course of a 7 game series, I think the Suns will last so long as they maintain their health as well. Like, that is still in question, and that could very much happen where one of the big 3 go down, and it's a totally different series. But I buy the Suns getting there in at least 6.
Yeah, and I'm banking a lot on experience too. Like, just the Timberwolves in general don't have a lot of playoff experience. They're similar to the Kings in that aspect. Like,
Mm-hmm.
it's a team that hasn't seen the playoffs in years. Obviously, they've been there, a few times in between, but in terms of how many times you've stacked playoff appearances, like, it's not that many. It
Mm-hmm.
dates back all the way to like Kevin Garnett, and it's a ways back, like even Kevin Love days, right?
Yeah.
Since then they've been pretty mid to bad. So
Mm-hmm.
when I'm looking at the Suns, like, yeah, they are a similar boat, but they've got winners now. They've got Bradley Beal, they've got Devin Booker, which they've had, but they've got Kevin Durant, and that's experience. They've seen winning championships, they've seen playoffs before, they've seen round ones before. This is just this is one of those scenarios that really boils down to experience, in my opinion.
Yeah, I agree. So we'll push on to the last pick, which is the Nuggets and the Lakers for the West. Ben, you had the pleasure of picking this series. Who did you have here?
Yeah, so this one was actually pretty easy for me, and I hate to say that. I actually have the Nuggets in 5 in this one.
Okay.
And the biggest reason is I trust LeBron. I really do. Um, I don't trust him at his age to carry them in a 7-game series against the team as good as the Nuggets are right now, especially when you have to consider they have to go into Denver
Right
for
away.
those games. And that's going to be exhausting. I know this guy LeBron puts millions and millions of dollars into his body every single year. There's a reason he's as in shape as he is at the age that he's at and still in the league. But going into Denver is no joke. There's a reason it's called a Mile High State. And it's going to be tiresome for sure. And I think it's really going to start to affect that team. And I think the Nuggets will kind of run away with the series.
I also think on that point, exactly when you're going to Denver, like you watch LeBron in the playing game, he was gassed. Like that dude was gassed. And I'm like, you're getting gassed in the play, and you're about to go up to Denver. And they've also lost 8 straight times to Denver, going back to the playoff
Wow.
sweep last year. So they got swept in the playoffs last year and they lost all 3 games they played this season. So it's just like this is just a bad matchup for the Lakers. And it's, but also Jamal Murray has played a huge factor in that. So it'll be interesting to see. I mean, it is playoff Murray time, so I wouldn't be surprised if he plays extremely well. Um, but yeah, I didn't like this matchup for the Lakers anyway. But I mean, hey, they get in the playoffs, and if there's going to be any chance to beat Denver, at least for the Lakers, it might be early on because this is going to be the freshest you're going to be. So might as well, because last year was the Western Conference Finals that they met, and they were gassed there as well. So it'll be interesting for sure. But I agree that the Nuggets will win the series.
Yeah, Nuggets in 5.
All right, so we moved on to the Eastern Conference now, just for the first round, and we obviously, like most people, I wouldn't be surprised. We have the Celtics. Um, what did we decide? You think 4 or 5 now that it's the Heat? Because that was also kind of the question. If it was the Bulls, I would have said a clean sweep, but
Yeah.
I don't know about Jimmy either.
And that's what it really comes down to is like, is Jimmy going to be available, number one, early in the
Mhm.
series, meaning game one, or is he going to be available later in the series? And then the question is, can they pick up games without him? So this is a tough one.
Mhm.
I think you and I need to come to like an agreement. Do you think
Yeah.
that Jimmy's going to play by game two?
No, I don't think so. And I could be totally wrong, but based off what I'm hearing with
Yeah.
his significance of his injury, I wouldn't be surprised. But he also played 3 quarters through it. I don't see Jimmy playing early enough in the series to matter. And I also think that even if he was playing, I don't think he would be able to get more than a win. Like this Celtics team is stacked.
Boston's loaded, man.
Yeah.
They've been my pick since before game one of this year to win it all this year. So I'm gonna say it's Celtics in 5. I don't know how
Yeah.
you feel about that.
To be totally safe, I agree completely. Because I feel like the Heat will steal a game.
Yeah, they've got it. It'll be in Miami, but they've got to get one.
Yeah. I mean, I don't know about that. Did you see that freaking crowd today, dude? It was
It
sad.
was yeah,
But
it was empty, but that's Miami's such a hit or a miss with a lot of these games.
yeah, it's sad. Sad that that's the case.
Just replace them with the Kings. We'll
Yeah,
show up,
exactly. We'd give him at least a fight. All right.
right?
All right, Ben, you had this one. It was the Cleveland Cavaliers versus the Orlando Magic. What do you think about this one?
This one's a fun matchup, and I'm actually really excited to watch these games. I think I'm gonna try to watch all of these games as much as I can. But when it comes to these Cavaliers Magic game, like I want to be locked in on this series because this is an interesting series. I'm looking from top to bottom at both of these teams. They're they're a carbon copy of what Eastern Conference teams look like this year, and it really does boil down to, can the Magic make threes? We talked about earlier this year how the Magic set a franchise record of threes against us, which was really frustrating. But the rest of the year, they were one of the worst, if not the worst at times in the league at 3 point in 3 point makes. So that's something to consider, especially when on the other side of the ball for Cleveland, you've got Jared Allen and Evan Mobley.
Mobley. Yeah.
Mobley. I blanked on his name for a second. Who's down there protecting the rim. And I know the Magic are a tall team, but that's a tall task to go up against those guys at the rim. So you've got to be able to knock down those threes. You've got to be able to spray it out and kind of pull what the Kings tried to do all season long, and that's just get into the paint and kick it out.
Yeah, I also think that the Cavs, just like, one thing that'll make them testy in this series is that they'll have the playoff experience. Like, Donovan Mitchell is awesome, and Darius Garland, they're both like a nice backcourt to have for a playoff series.
Yeah, and for that reason is why I said Cavs in 6.
Yeah, for sure. So, Cavs in 6. All right. So I had this one, the Bucks versus the Pacers, and this one was interesting because I really liked the the story behind it, because it's obviously one of the most popular series of the year, even though the Bucks got owned in this series. And obviously the 64-point game ball incident happened in this, with this particular team. They met in the in-season tournament. This was there's some bad blood brewing here, and it's because the Pacers have been consistently outclassing the Bucks, and now with Giannis potentially missing the first 2 games at the absolute worst, or at the absolute best, I don't see it. Like, Dame, even if like prime Dame came out, um, I don't think that Milwaukee will win this series, because Dame won't be able to do enough. And they're just older and slower. And against the Pacers team that, even if Tyrese hasn't been playing insane lately, they still, with Siakam, he's gotten that second man who can help him out, and Miles Turner provides enough size. I just think they've been giving this team trouble all year. And without Giannis, that experience won't be able to save them this time. So I have the Pacers in 6. I don't know what you think
Yeah, and
about that.
I think that's the safe bet. Honestly, it's crazy because like a year ago, I'd laugh at that.
Right.
And I think everybody would laugh at that. But looking at what the Pacers have done to the Bucks as a matchup, as an individual matchup this year, it's kind of crazy. And it's crazy when you see it from the outside, but then as you start to get into the nitty-gritty of it, like it kind of makes sense. And then you look at the Pacers in 6 and you think, well, this actually does kind of make some sense. So I think, yeah, Pacers in 6 is kind of realistic.
Yeah, it makes me want to vomit inside that Tyrese gets his first playoff series wins before we do, because of
Yeah.
just, rotten luck and good timing. That's just how it works. But yeah, no, and again, I wouldn't be surprised if Milwaukee does win the series, but it would take a lot for me, in that opinion. And that's how I feel about this series too, with the Knicks and the Sixers. I picked this one as well. Um, injuries do play a role in this. Now, the Knicks are coming into this with OG Anunoby, so he's coming back healthy. Obviously, Julius Randle is out. But when you look at the Sixers, they have a top 3 player in the NBA in Joel Embiid. And he's been playing hobbled and at 70%, and he is still the most dominant player on the floor.
Yep.
And in this series, when the best the Knicks can really throw at him is Isaiah Hartenstein and maybe a Mitchell Robinson who's banged up, or OG Anunoby, I just don't see anybody who can really give him an answer. And even if Jalen Brunson goes off, Tyrese Maxey is equally capable of going off. And if you're pairing Brunson against him, or even against one of the other guards, I don't. And Buddy Hield is involved in this, but Nick Batum makes good plays. They have Tobias Harris. Like, they have the size to match up with the Knicks too, and to be able to hurt them in different ways. So for that reason, I have the Sixers in 6, and it could go to 7. I totally believe that it could go to 7, but I don't know. It's just that Joel Embiid just means too much to me to not, like, I can't root against him in the series.
He's somebody that the Knicks are going to have to double more often than not. And I feel like come at least game 3, at least, the Sixers will figure out a way to distribute that ball out of Joel Embiid's hands and get production from the other guys on that team. And you're just going to start to see the Sixers run away with this series at that point. Like it really does boil down to, are the rest of the supporting cast going to be on Joel Embiid's back, or are they going to be, the bricks weighing him down? And
Right.
that's going to be kind of the determiner for sure.
Yeah, this will be a huge, potential breakout series for Tyrese Maxey. And, so those guys can step up. They have, like I said, I think it's going to be a fun matchup too. Like, it'll be an overall good matchup. So that'll be interesting for me to see too. So let's move on to the semis. Let's do that. So we got the Thunder and Mavs. So Ben, when we were kind of talking this over, I don't know if we saw the same way on this series. What would you think in this particular series if this was a semifinal matchup?
This one is another tough one.
Right? It's tough.
I sit here, I look at one side with Luka, with Kyrie, I look at the other. You got Shai Gilgeous-Alexander, who SGA has been a flamethrower this year. So is Luka. Both are in the MVP race. This could be the matchup of the playoffs if it comes to this, in the entire playoffs. And it is so hard to think that one of these teams could lose to the other in any less than 7 games.
Right.
So I see the series going 7, but I have the Thunder winning this one. And this is me personally, and this is considering experience. This is considering, all the factors that weigh into it. I think the Thunder just have too much going for them offensively that the Mavericks might not be able to keep up.
And I can understand why you say that. And the Mavericks, on paper, everything looks right. Like in terms of statistics, advanced stat, they're a top 5 team in both offensive and defensive rating. They're one of, I think, only 2 teams in the league that can fit that bill. And I believe in SGA. He's been in this position before, but this team with Chet, Jalen Williams, I don't know if they would be enough to hold off on Luka and Kyrie, who have a boatload of experience. And Kyrie and Luka, we just talked about earlier, is one of the best playoff performers so far throughout his young time in the playoffs. But he's been so awesome this year too, and I just think he's kind of figured it out. And now having Kyrie as the true second, it's almost like you have that killer ready to go. And I like the look of their team and their level of physicality, like with Gafford, PJ Washington. They can fluster the Thunder in kind of an even way, in my opinion. I do think that the Mavs, I don't know, maybe I don't know, I feel more confident in them, and I think it's because they got hot at the right time. They only lost it was between 3 to 5 games since the All-Star break. And so they've been consistent. But I mean, we've been able to hang around with both of these teams, so it makes me, I do have questions about both of them. So listen, for this one, I'll let you take this one. I will concede and do Thunder in 7 if that's what we're feeling.
So there's one more factor that plays into my decision, and that's the home court advantage that plays into this. And that's the Thunder going into it. They have the home court advantage. That means that the first 2 games will be in OKC, and the very last one would end in OKC if it did come down to a game 7. OKC's home court record this year is 33-8. And that's phenomenal.
Yeah, it's a great place to play.
I don't see the Thunder losing a game 7 scenario at home against any team other than maybe Boston. I don't think there's a Western Conference team other than maybe Denver. Really, maybe Denver. And that's if we get a prime Jokic game.
Which I wouldn't be surprised.
I wouldn't either, yeah.
Yeah, he's arguably the MVP.
Yeah, but that's what it would take, right? And again, yeah, Luka, yeah, Kyrie, great players, really, really great players. It's just going to be so hard, and especially once you go 7 games, your you're on the ground a lot of these games, like crawling to the finish line, trying to just get the last bit of air and everything under your shot. You know what I mean? Like,
Right.
and the thing that really pushes you over the hump is that home court advantage. Now, I know the Kings, that's what they had going for them last year. It took a Steph Curry 50-pointer.
Right.
So that's why I would say Thunder in 7. I mean, I'm
That's
just
fair.
going to go ahead and lock it.
All right, then let's lock it in. Thunder at 7. All right, so we got the Suns and Nuggets. I think this is a pretty easy one. Like, I think you and I could pretty much agree. Like, the Suns make it this far, but they run into the Nuggets, and they'll play them tough. Like, they'll play them well, but I think the Nuggets are just a better team than Phoenix. And I think,
Yeah,
but it's still going to be a series, though. So,
it definitely will, and it'll be fun. I mean, Jokic and KD have always played each other really well. It's been fun matchups every time they play.
mhm.
But yeah, that Suns team just doesn't have the the skill level, the matchups that Denver's got going for them right now. And again, another home court advantage. Denver's got arguably the best in the league just because of the physical nature of their home court advantage. And that plays a major factor, especially for older guys.
Yeah, agreed. So we'll still think the Suns will give them a series, right? So, Nuggets in 6?
Yeah, I would say Nuggets in 6 is probably a safe bet.
Yeah. So we got the 1 and 2 seed moving on to the Western Conference Finals. That's lit. We love that. All right. In the East, Celtics and Cavs. Now, so I want to influence, or not influence, put into perspective the success that Boston has been having and like the disappointment that this year would provide. They're 11.4 in net rating, and the next closest team is the Thunder at 7.4. And so they've been 11 points better than every team that they face at any given time this season. And they're combined, I forget exactly what stat it was, but I think it's their point differential. Their point differential is historic. Like, they've just been this dominant this year. And all the pieces have kind of fallen in the right place for them. You
Yeah.
got Joel Embiid hobbling around. Giannis is hurt right now. Jimmy Butler is out. Like, the guys who have hurt you in the past are kind of all falling down right now. And I love this Cleveland team. Like, they're awesome. Like, they're scrappy. Donovan Mitchell's awesome. But I do think the duo of JT and Jaylen Brown and Porzingis, that mixture is just like, it is too dominant. And with Drew Holiday too, he'll do a great job locking up either one of those guards. So
Yeah, the Celtics have got everything going for them this year. And to think that they would go out in the semifinal, it doesn't add up for me. And I don't think it does for you either. So I think ultimately I have the Celtics winning the series. I know you do too. The question is how many games. Personally, I think it's 5.
Yeah, I think so too. I think Cleveland's going to give them a good game, but I think just in general, this is a well-coached team. Like, they're aggressive, and I just think they're gonna be able to beat down that team. Donovan's gonna get hot for one game, and that's gonna get him a game. But then it's just gonna be not consistent enough the rest of the way.
Yeah.
Okay, so this one's interesting, but I have an answer, but like there's a way where both of these teams could win between the Pacers and the Sixers. But I'm curious to think, who would you pick in this situation?
If Joel is healthy,
And that's the big
healthy
if, right?
enough,
Yeah.
yeah. If he's good enough, if he's 70% at least, the Sixers, I think they win the series. They don't necessarily run away with it. I would say that they probably win it in 5 or 6 games, probably 6 games.
Yeah,
I
I'd
think would be
probably
a
do
safe
six
one for
too.
me. If he's not healthy, that's really what it comes down to. Because I think if he's out for 2 games of that series, Pacers have a really good chance at winning
Take
that
them to
series.
7.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and yeah, JoJo's going to be the big factor. That's the only reason I have major faith in the Sixers is you have the most dominant big man in the league. Like, dominant physically, just imposing, and he is still adjusting to the new physicality of it all cuz he's been gone for so long. But
Yeah.
once he gets used to it, it's over. And by the playoffs, he plays well, but this would be his opportunity to, to shake off his kind of monkey on his back and not being able to advance even this far. He hasn't gotten out of the second round yet. It's the Chris Paul curse.
which is so crazy.
Right. And like Chris Paul eventually broke it, but he was that guy for a while. And Joel Embiid is a MVP, and that it's very rare that MVPs don't at least get to a conference final.
Right.
So, all right, Thunder and Nuggets. This one has to be tough, right? I think that if it were me personally, I think by this time, after 2 tough series, I think the Thunder lose with the experience that's handed to them. And I don't think that they'll be able to take a Denver team that's made it this far, that must be grooving, to 7. I would say it'd be Nuggets in 6. And just because the Jokic versus Chet matchup, Jamal and SGA would cancel each other out, I think. But I think the Nuggets are just better equipped to handle Western Conference Finals basketball versus this team.
See, I personally think SGA would cook.
Oh, I think
Murray.
he'd cook. I totally think he'd cook. But I think in terms of impact of the game, they're going to cancel each other out. Because I think Murray is going to equally contribute. I don't think not like a SGA triple-double, but that's what Jokic is. It's Jokic and SGA in that sense. But I don't think Chet will provide a fun matchup, but I think Jokic is going to have his way with him.
I see what you're getting at. So basically what you're getting out of Murray and Jokic is just a better recipe for a winning series in this case than Chet and SGA is. Because you're not going to get the same kind of production out of Chet. I get you. Yeah.
And if I'm the Thunder, if I'm the Nuggets, I'd totally be okay with letting SGA pop up for 40 every night if you just take care of everyone else, because you can.
Right.
So, and no one on that team can stop Jokic. No one. Like let's just
not a soul.
So that's where I feel like if you can't stop Jokic, who literally controls the game, he can cancel out a guard like SGA. And their supporting pieces, they've been there, done that. I think AG would have a good series because no one would pay attention to him from the dunker spot because they tried to focus so hard on Jokic to help Chet. So it's like, this is where I think the Thunder would meet their match, but I also think the Thunder are good enough to take this to at least 6. But I think eventually get worn down, even if they're on at home more often.
Yeah, I think Denver in 6 is probably the right call on that.
Okay. Love that. All right. So this one's tough. This one I don't believe that if Joel is even 70% of himself, that they would win the series.
They don't stand a chance.
I don't think, and if Joel is healthy going into the series, I give them going at least 6. I could see them pushing it, but I don't know. I don't know if it's like, because we'll talk about it in a second here, because I think we're both going to pick the Celtics here, but yeah, by this point, I don't even know if Joel is going to be good playing, surviving 2 series in the first place.
Yeah, it's going to be a tough call. I mean, let's say he makes it all the way. Let's say for the sake of this right here, let's say he's at least 70% going into this series. Okay. You kind of alluded to it. I still don't think that's going to change anything in this series. Personally, like, let's put aside both starting 5s for both teams for a second, and let's look at the bench. Celtics still run away with this series.
For sure.
Like, and it's not even close in that aspect. And I know when it comes to playoffs, like, typically an NBA team will stick around like an 8-man rotation. Those 3 guys coming off the bench for the Celtics are a lot better than the 3 guys coming off the bench for the Sixers. And it's, I think this could actually be a messy series if the Sixers aren't careful.
Like, you think they could lose in 5?
That's what I was about to say. I would say I would probably take the Celtics in 5 pretty confidently. I don't know how you feel.
No, I believe it. I just think by this point, I just don't see them surviving this long. I think it would be successful for him to make it this far, given how the season went for this team.
Yeah. All
right, so our final pick, the Denver Nuggets at Celtics. I know this felt like the safe bet, but I mean, it's weird how it felt that way, even though I felt like we did a good job of not being biased, or I think it's just clear that these 2 teams are probably the best. Even though the Celtics look more dominant in the East, the Nuggets obviously do have the tougher road. especially if they have to go through the Celtics team. But if there's one team I think could beat the Celtics, it is these Nuggets. But I wouldn't be surprised if this is the year the Celtics get through the hump, especially if they clear the field the way we think they are. If they're going to go 5-1, I think this series goes to 7 because of Denver, and I think that the Celtics win if that were the case.
Yeah,
But I don't know how I feel.
This is a fun one, and I really do hope that we get this series, for the sole reason of just who's going to defend Jokic. Like, that's something that the Celtics are going to be rattling their brains about, and then on the other side, how do you defend the entire starting five for the Celtics?
Mm-hmm.
Of the Celtics, you know what I mean? Like, as Denver, and that's a tough ask. And then the Celtics have to consider, well, we're going to the Mile High State. And this is something that is so overlooked so often, and I can't stress it enough. Like, going into Denver for a 7-game series is so tough. And that team is used to playing there. They play there all the time. So this is a tough one. I want to hear who you say first.
Fudge. That's tough. Okay. Personally, what I personally want, and
wants and what you think is entirely different.
Right. And no hate on this team that I'm about to go against, but I want the Nuggets to win. Like, I truly think that this is a kind of a coin flip game, like coin flip series. Like, I could see both teams I wouldn't be surprised if either one wins in 6 or if either one wins in 7. I wouldn't be surprised if the Celtics win in 5. But I don't know why I trust the Nuggets so much. But I don't know if this is the year. Like, I don't know if Jokic, because Murray, the difference between this Boston team is Marcus Smart and Drew Holiday, and I think he might make that difference for me. Like, Drew Holiday, Derek White, I think they would be able to have the answer against Jamal. Kristaps could be at least the closest thing to an answer against Jokic if he makes it that far in terms of size and maybe just making life a little bit more difficult. So if it were me, my heart wants Denver, but I would pick Boston in 7. Is how I would pick it. I think this is the year JT and Jalen get one, and I think this is the year that, I don't think it'll launch anyone anywhere, but obviously I think they would have won the title. They have been knocking on the door for so long, and they have maintained this opportunity. I think they're going to kick it down this time.
Do you know what happened in the regular season between these two teams?
The Nuggets won both times, yeah?
Yeah.
Yeah. I
and
know.
They were great matchups. They were great games.
Mm-hmm.
We're going to disagree on this one. We're going to have to find a medium point because I think the Denver Nuggets pull this off. I really do in this matchup. And I think they'd get them in 6. I think they would wear them down in 6.
Oh, I don't know about that. I think it would take game 6 in Denver to wear out the Boston team before going to game 7 for a winner takes all.
I think it would happen on the 6th.
Oh wow, that's nuts.
I don't know. So
that's nuts.
For the sake of, because it's our behind the back.
Yeah.
And this is good. This is good that we have this discrepancy.
Mm-hmm.
We gotta figure out who we're taking. Okay. I think you have the better take on the Celtics in terms of why you believe they would take the series. So I'm down to take Celtics in 7, you said, right?
But to play the devil's advocate, I'd also be totally down to go with my heart pick if you're willing to push it to 7. Because I think this is a 7-game series.
All right, Denver in 7.
Yeah,
lock it in.
Let's lock it in. We'll do Denver in 7. I'm willing to do that because I want the Nuggets to win, if I'm being honest. So
it kind of, to be honest with you, I think you made this comparison a little while ago and it pissed me off. Mm-hmm. You compared the Celtics to the Niners, where it was like they just couldn't get over the damn hump.
Was it? I compared the Niners to the Clippers, I think.
Oh, that's right. It's
because they couldn't stay healthy. Deal. Because they're older, couldn't stay healthy. Yeah, whatever.
That's fair. Okay, fine. So in my head then, I was almost picturing the Niners as a Celtics team where it's like they do so well in the regular season. They do pretty well in the postseason. And then when they get to the big stage, like, I don't know what happens, but all what has regularly been working is out the window.
Uh,
And I can kind of see it happening.
no,
I don't
yeah.
know.
No, I agree. So I completely agree with you. You sold me on it and I'll take it. So let's do this tiebreaker. How many total points will be scored in game 1 of the NBA finals? So if these two match up, do you see this being like what were the scores of the regular season
So
games?
at the beginning of the year, it was 102 to 100 Nuggets.
Mm-hmm.
And in March, it was 115 to 109. So I think a
I'd buy like anywhere under 105 for both teams for the first matchup. I would totally
under
buy it.
105.
Yeah, I think like each. I think it would be like
Mm-hmm.
it could be 105 like 101 or like 103, 101, 10 it's going to be close. I think it's going to be close for the first
No, I'll
game.
call
I
it
think
105, 103. We'll
105,
call it
103.
208.
So okay. Deal. Let's do that. Boom. All right. We've been submitted, but we can edit anytime before locks, but no, we're locked in, guys.
We're
Look at
locked
this
in.
pretty bracket right here. Unfortunately, the Kings aren't in it, and we're doing this to, at the end of the day, ignore our pain from having lost this game. It
If
sucks.
if the Kings beat the Pelicans, the Kings would have swept every series and gone on to win the championship. And
Exactly.
it's unfortunate we ran into the same team that's knocked us out six
That's what
times
happened
this
last
year.
year, right? Like, had we just won, we would have won the whole thing. So
Yeah.
that's how it is every year, and we're gonna trick ourselves into thinking we're gonna be able to get there again. So
We would have been like 17-time title holders in the past 17 years if we just made the playoffs. Like, that's the crazy part to me.
oh, dude, the cope is
It's
nuts.
optimistic.
Yeah. So, but obviously, hey, we can reserve our tickets to the California Classic early. It's gonna be fine.
Yeah.
But no, there's a lot of work to be done, and I think that's a good thing. I don't think it's a bad thing. This team, we need change, and obviously this kind of sucks. But we beat the Warriors. I'm gonna take that with me as a positive, as a building block into next year. And there's and a lot of factors are going to play into our success that we can talk about. So I'm okay with it, but now we can get into our offseason talk of maybe guys we want, and we're gonna go through, players and kind of talk about our favorite guys so you guys can feel us out a little better now that these seasons are over. Like this is our first, full year of the seasons being over. So how are you feeling now that we've kind of gotten this far at that point?
I mean, now that neither of our teams, football and basketball, have won, I think it's safe to say we can stop doing the podcast. It's been a pleasure, everybody, but till we win a championship. No,
Yeah.
this is kind of the beauty in having like a podcast that talks about teams like this is like there's so many good things that happen during the season, the regular seasons, and then you hit the playoffs and you go on these crazy runs. Your team maybe makes the Super Bowl or you make an NBA championship, and then you lose it or you win it. Regardless, there's an off season to talk about, and that's the beauty of sports. That's the beauty of doing these things is like there is always something to talk about. And
Mhm.
obviously, like the NFL draft is right around the corner. That's going to be something that we talk about very, very, very soon, as that's 6 days away, as you reminded me today.
Yes, I was like, we gotta get our draft picks, man. I'm ready. I got names to
Yeah,
throw at you.
exactly. So that's going to be something that happens very soon. And then there's so much to talk about with the Kings specifically.
For sure.
In there's a lot to also sit back on our couches and watch what happens with them this offseason. What kind of money are they going to throw at Malik? What kind of opportunities are they going to throw at him? Is it, how are they going to gauge that situation? And then if he does go, how do you respond? What do you bring in? Like there's so many questions going in. There's so much to talk about. It's going to be fun. It's going to be a good ride. Like we appreciate you guys sticking around with us through the whole thing.
For sure. It's been a blessing, honestly. Just fun. This is our weekly vent session right here, and it makes me happy. It brings me peace. It'll be fun to see, like, as the pod develops, just how much things change throughout the years. We could end up, our teams could be the worst thing ever for 5 years, and all of a sudden they're winning the title. Like, who knows what's gonna happen? Um, and yeah, a lot to unbox this off season, and we're gonna have some fun with it. We might get a couple guests on here. We might switch things up a little bit just to add a little bit of variety while we, wait for the season to start. So, I wish I was traveling to Brazil with the Eagles in week 1, but, I'll have to just sit on my laurels until then.
Yeah, for sure.
All right. So, any final thoughts, Ben, before we hang out here? Any final words before, now that the season's over?
It was a good season.
It was a good season.
It was a good season. That's all.
It was a good season. Not great. It was good.
Yeah.
Crappy ending, but it's okay. We'll move on. So,
Hey,
yeah.
real quick, I would take this over losing another 7-game series or getting eliminated to the Warriors.
For sure. Exactly. For me, it was like I said last pod, like beating the Warriors was all that really mattered to me. Any win going forward was icing on the cake, but the writing was on the wall, and it sucks that was actually the case.
Yeah.
You think that you could beat a team at least once in 6 attempts, but maybe next year we, flip it again. Who knows? Like, it wasn't the case going into this season. They weren't giving us that. De'Aaron was giving them that work early, for the past few couple of years, and I don't know. I don't doubt that we'll be able to, get things going in the right direction again.
Yeah, I'm in the same boat. So this was episode 38. Marcos, go ahead and sign us off.
As Ben said, this is episode 38 of the Behind the Back podcast. You can hit us up at behindthebackpod13@gmail.com. Hit us up on Instagram, Twitter, TikTok, X. And I didn't say this at the beginning because we were too busy being depressed. For those of you who are audio listeners and want to follow us on YouTube to check us out, look at our live reaction, look at what we put for the bracket moving forward, and look ahead into our mock draft, you can check us out on YouTube. We have our descriptions for everything below. So please give us a like, or if you're listening on audio, give us a review, rate the show. That helps us out too. We'd love to hear what you guys have and love your opinion of our show. So we always want to grow with you guys. So I'm Marcos Conan Negron. Beside me here, as always, is
Ben the Jet, baby. We love y'all.
We love y'all, guys. Talk to y'all next week. Peace.
Peace.